Welcome back, everybody. This is the fourth in my series of videos looking at the rise of modern Jamaican music, kind of jumping forward in time frame than my usual videos. Inspired by the recent passing of the great producer Robert Bobby Digital Dixon and his many innovations, his great influence on reggae music of a more modern vintage, and the listening that's inspired from my collection. Bobby Digital had arrived at King Jammy's studio, his first boss, just as King Jammy unleashed the Slang Tang rhythm track, which was created on a Casio keyboard, drum machine, no traditional instrumentation, caused a sensation in reggae, which saw the music go to a digital bass, created with electronic keyboards, drum machines. The large session bands of previous years were largely phased out. These lowered production costs saw a plethora of new producers enter the arena, as well as vintage ones be re-energized by the new sound, the new direction. Many other producers entered the field. Some, like veterans Augustus Gussie Clarke and his Music Works studio, would as well as Donovan Germain. Both of their careers went back to the 1970s. They would put out some crucial work in the 1980s, going into the 1990s, which would broaden the appeal of dancehall outside of the sound system scene, outside of the strictly dancehall crowd, while still working within the raga phase of dancehall, of reggae. The rhythm duo of Steely and Clevie, who had helped shape much of King Jammy's sound in those latter half years of the 1980s when he was dominant on the scene. They would go solo, start up their own label, start doing their own productions, as well as continuing to craft rhythm tracks, electronically created rhythm tracks for many other producers, including Jammy. Bobby Digital himself would go out on his own around 1988, start up his own label, but Jammy's continued on just the same way well into the 1990s. Indeed, his own sons started getting into the music in the 1990s, set up their own labels, became kind of a Jammy's family dynasty. Steely and Clevie at this time were the cutting-edge rhythm duo, and this period saw reggae music crossing over internationally. Hardcore dancehall DJing, no concessions to outside tastes, to commercial considerations as maybe there would have been in the days of the 1970s. DJs like Shabba Ranks started putting out albums on major labels, some produced by Bobby Digital. Shabba Ranks right here, as seen with Home T and dancehall singer Coco T here on Gussie Clarke's Music Works label, key label of the late 1980s. This includes the big hit Pirates Anthem, mixing up DJing with singing, big hit of the era. Shabba Ranks would put out these major label albums. Other DJs would follow suit. Bounty Killer, Beanie Man, all these bringing hardcore dancehall DJing into the international arena. Steely and Clevie would remain at the top of the heap for the last few years of the 1980s, early 1990s, cutting edge rhythm tracks, as well as revisiting elements of reggae's past, as on their album Steely and Clevie Play Studio One Vintage, which spawned an international hit with Don Penn's recut of You Don't Love Me, aka No No No, which charted internationally in the early 1990s. DJ and singer duo Chakademus and Pliers hit with Murder, She Wrote in these years. Raga and the reggae culture that had spawned it was at a higher profile than ever before. So things were going great, right? Well, yes and no. There were problems in the music. Check this Steely and Clevie produced tune from the early 1990s for a sample.
Now listen me now, rude boy. Remember this. Listen me, we come on. And I'll leave me gun 9 years. I'll me gun for me. Watch it. All rude boy, get in line now, no man.
Steely and Clevie. Soundboy clap.
Me have me gun for me. And if you think I like me, take it out. Make you see me have me gun for me have me gun for me. And if you think I like me, take it out. Make you see. Watch it. I'm a tick, we no afraid to bust it. Watch it. A oversized slip in a it. Watch it. Every day we get up and we shine it. Police search me and them can't find it. It's one me call it the invisible matic.
Talking about his Matic, his automatic weapon, how the police can't find it, every day he gets up and shine it, and he's not afraid to use it. Gun lyrics had entered the music in a big way to go along with the slackness, the sexually explicit lyrics. This was a tune by DJ Wickerman called Matic, and this appeared on Profile Records in the US, early 1990s, 1991. Gun lyrics increasingly becoming prevalent in the music as the 1980s turned into the 1990s. These would become prevalent. This wasn't a big hit song, wasn't especially remarkable, but it appeared on a major label. It was becoming a sign of the times. It's maybe disingenuous to point the finger at any one producer. As I've said, Steely and Clevie, also capable of bringing back classic elements from reggae's past. It's maybe disingenuous to point the finger at any one artist, one producer. It was a symptom of what was going on in the music, and more importantly, what was going on in Jamaican society at that point. Traditionally in the past, the two main Jamaican political parties had covertly employed heavily armed street gangs to enforce their will, especially at election time. The resulting violence would result in hundreds dead over the years in Jamaica. In the 1980s, these gangs ceased to be under the control of the political parties and set out to pursue their own agendas, which involved getting into international drug trades. Cocaine and crack started flooding the island of Jamaica in the 1980s, and as well as the exuberance of the digital era of reggae, of dancehall reggae. You can also hear some tension and paranoia creep into these computer-created tracks as drugs began to penetrate society with the resulting disastrous effects. The artists were not immune. Also, flood of automatic weapons starting to come into the island as these former street gangs set up themselves as basically private armies controlling entire neighborhoods with the Dons and their private armies basically that they employed. Violence in reggae starts exploding at an explosive rate, and part of these lyrics were just braggadocio, posturing on record. This had kind of gone on from the days of sound clashes, kind of ramped up a bit in the dancehall era as the sound system subject matter crept onto record more, but violence began to be felt for real at a more explosive rate than perhaps you had seen in previous generations of reggae. I've sometimes been taken to task for kind of focusing on the tragic deaths in reggae in my videos, but just to put it in focus here, 1987, founding member of the Wailers, from the founding generation of reggae, Peter Tosh, 1987, slaughtered in his own home in a robbery by men he knew, was familiar with. 1988, or in late 1980s, DJ Fathead, one-time partner of superstar Yellowman, killed in Miami, I believe, in apparently a drug deal gone awry. Dancehall DJ, or Sing J, Tenor Saw of Ring the Alarm fame. Ring the Alarm, heavily sampled in American hip-hop. Dead in America, found dead by the side of the road, as well as DJ or singer Nitty Gritty, Sing J. Sometimes these artists, it's difficult to tell which side of the fence they're on. The lines tend to get blurred in dancehall, so the term Sing J was coined to kind of encompass these artists that have elements of singing and DJing in their style. Nitty Gritty, who had recorded digital tunes for King Jammies, among other producers, shot dead in New York City in the late 1980s. He had pulled a gun on another artist by the name of Supercat. Supercat, who recorded for Winston Riley's Techniques label. Winston Riley, another veteran who was on a very strong phase in the late 1980s with his Techniques label. One of these veteran producers who was really rejuvenated by the new digital dancehall sound. Nitty Gritty reportedly pulled a gun on fellow artist Supercat, but his gun jammed. Supercat's did not. Supercat was later acquitted of killing Nitty Gritty by reason of self-defense. And the deaths went on. A DJ named Dirtsman, who had declared he was hot this year, also shot dead in the early 1990s. Many others. Perhaps the one that shocked the island most was an up-and-coming DJ named Panhead, who had had hits with songs like Punny Printer for King Jammies, that classic blue and white Jammies logo. Also shot dead 1992. And these artists' names are maybe not well known outside of reggae, outside of maybe a few people watching these videos, but their deaths sent shockwaves through the reggae fraternity, the reggae community. Panhead's death in particular shocked a fellow DJ by the name of Buju Banton, an up-and-coming artist who was heavily associated with Donovan Germain's Penthouse label. So these kind of gun lyrics were becoming more and more prevalent in Jamaican music in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Here's a song by Ninja Man called My Weapon, again talking about his gun. So on the record, you know, it's partly metaphorical, it's partly not meant to be taken seriously, but some elements of violence were definitely being felt in real life as Jamaican music, which had kind of always thrilled to the Western movies, going back to the days of the 1960s, going back to artists like Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, that had named themselves after these celluloid cowboy heroes. The streets of Kingston were becoming a real-life Wild West when dancehall singer Coco T recorded his song Kingston Hot in the early 1990s for producer Henry Junjo Laws. He wasn't talking about the weather, and Henry Junjo Laws knew those streets well also. So this kind of subject matter becoming more and more prevalent. As well, there was the slackness, there was the sexually explicit lyrics. One of the most controversial songs in all of Jamaican music in these years, or maybe any year, was by that DJ Buju Banton. Just to preface this, I kind of hesitate to even show this record. It's very, very controversial to this day. This is Buju Banton, Boom Bye Bye. Very controversial song. I happened to get this record in a bulk lot I purchased. This came on the Shang Records label. It's an X Sound System copy. So this was played in dances at the time. The song goes Boom Bye Bye in a Batty Boy Head, which is talking about violence towards homosexuals, batty men, or batty boys, as the slang is in Jamaican patois. Buju Banton himself long since disavowed this song. He's ashamed of it. He was a teenager when he wrote these words. And the death of his friend Dirtsman would hit him particularly hard. He was in Japan on tour when he heard the news, sat down and wrote a song called Murderer, which goes, "Murderer, your insides must be hollow. How does it feel to take the life of another?" And recorded it the next week on his return in Jamaica. So this reaction to these kind of lyrics, this kind of subject matter was ongoing. Coco T's album for Bobby Digital, Come Love Me, released in 1995. Some of the tracks recorded earlier. Too Much Gun Lyrics, one of the songs included on here. So there was a reaction building against this kind of subject matter, against some of the directions the music was taking. This would grow even stronger in the early 1990s as this highly successful phase of the music was taking place. A resurgence of the roots and culture would take place. The healing of the dance hall would come from within, from a new generation of artists who would bring back the roots and culture themes of the 1970s, which had done so much to bring reggae internationally, but those international listeners had kind of been disassociated from reggae since the digital music, since the dance hall. The dance hall artists, the new artists, would bring back the energy, the youthful excitement of the dance hall, but also bring back a new sense of positivity, of a cultural message, messages of Rastafarian themes would come back, partly inspired by US hip hop. There would be a symbiotic relationship between American music and hip hop, particularly was entering a very political phase, a very conscious phase. One of the key artists who came out advocating this return to roots and culture was a young, pure-voiced singer named Garnet Silk, whose debut album was produced by Bobby Digital, bringing it full circle back to Bobby Digital. Garnet Silk, 100% Silk, put out very cultural, very spiritual tunes. Nothing Can Divide Us, Blessed Be the Almighty, Zion in a Vision, bringing back roots and culture themes. There would be others who would take up the mantle. Luciano would bring roots and culture reggae as exemplified by the new dancehall spirit to a major label, Island Records. 1995, the classic Where There Is Life album, 100% spiritual roots reggae as brought forward by a new generation of dancehall artists. Roots and culture would start to reassert control of the music, but still a roots and culture with the energy of the dancehall, kind of a symbiosis of the two. I'm going to leave you, and I hope everybody's enjoyed this series of videos. I may pick up the story going forward into the 1990s as this roots and culture resurgence happened into the 2000s. I have many boxes of 45s I was buying in those years I can show. May take a pause, see how people are reacting to this more modern series of videos. May go back to my vintage timeline for a while. But as I go, I want to leave you with a very special tune to me. Came out in 1999, closing out the decade, as that song I played a few minutes ago kind of exemplified the first part of the decade. By 1999, we're hearing songs like City of Peace by dancehall singer Thriller U, who is another veteran, probably completely unknown to most watching this video. His career goes back to the late 1980s, recorded for Bobby Digital, recorded for King Jammy. This is a song he put out in 1999 as a love letter to his city of Kingston. It's kind of a special song I heard at the time. Had to buy the 45. I was listening to it again the other night, and it kind of brought home what I was thinking about with this video. Hope you can hear that. A little crackly from the 45. The Rude Boys in Kingston Town. And Guns and Ammunition. We need a city of justice, a city of peace. Kingston City. Because that's where they shoot the DJ Dirtsman down. City of Love. For every one of us. Can't live without it. Peace, final community. Thank you for watching.